Putting here.
All right, let me go ahead and just hit. Let me just hit got it
Okay.
because I have a big got it on. Okay,
All good.
it's all yours now.
All right. So let's open up our tools again. Developer tools. I think the shortcut for that was actually Control Shift I, just to get that one open. Right. And this is what we were seeing last time in terms of using require here. But basically what we're trying to do here is set up it's basically almost like an import statement. And I remember we took it directly from like Firebase's documentation. So if we wanted to do an import, something like this, let's say import, and we'll say service accounts from, then let's do a relative path here to service account key. And then that'll make service account available to us. We just got to do the same sort of thing over here with admin. I'm sorry if I hit the command button there.
No worries.
But let me double check on my end that particular line that we need here, because if we're going ahead and saying admin require Firebase admin, I should be able to go ahead and state, let's try here, import admin from Firebase admin. Let's save that out. Let's go ahead and give this a refresh here. All right, so in this case, if we're trying to go ahead and set up, I believe the issue is this import right over here. Let me try to change my syntax a little bit. Let's refresh over here. Okay, so let's go ahead and update my syntax a little bit more. So we're going to import everything here as admin, Firebase admin. Right, now remember us seeing this error last time with Firebase admin. So let me go ahead and see the particular import line here. We should.
Oh yeah. Do you need to bring up Firebase?
That's okay. I'm actually just going to look up this one individual package, which is what we're using. Yeah, Firebase admin. But we can also get the Firebase up here because we're gonna definitely come back to it. So let's go over here. Let's see their documentation. We've already gone ahead and run our installation here. Documentation is here, setup guide. Let's take a look at their setup guide here. Okay, so this is just directly from Firebase's syntax here. Let's see, we have initialize app. See require used here. We are using. Okay, so let's stay here then. Same syntax as what we see there. So I'm going to say import initialize app. Let's import this from Firebase admin /app. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and call this method without admin. And let's go ahead and check out our application now. Okay, so let's double check our code up here as well. And I'm also going to go ahead and shut down this server. Let's just restart. Just start back at our main page here. So let's see, we have initialize app. In this case, we're not using admin. It's going to actually just be credential, but let's see what else from this documentation we can use here. We've gone ahead and imported initialize app. So therefore app is equal to initialize app. So let's see here, refresh token, database URL. Let's see here a bit more. And we can stay here as well. App is equal to initialize app. But in this case, if we're bringing in initialize app from Firebase admin app, we've got admin.credential. This is actually going to be undefined for us, but let me see their initialize app syntax here. Just a moment. Let's go ahead and change our syntax up here just for a moment. State. Then from Firebase admin. Let's go ahead here and we're going to import all as service account from our JSON file. So let's keep all these in here. Let's go back into here. Let's refresh. I want to see this one here. Again, we've got admin.initialize app in place here. Let's get rid of this piece right here. Okay, let's refresh this once more. Let's see. Over here, initialize app. What we have here, we have admin.initialize app, credential admin.credential.cert, service account. Okay, let's also go ahead and pass here database URL. And our database URL should be right up, or rather right down here. Actually, I should be able to just copy paste it in, kind of like we did last time for the other URL. We have that stored over here. Let's get the, again, in this case, we're going to need to drop the database URL. So our database URL should be, let's see, firebase.io. We should have that link. Let me go over to here. Let's go over to our console. And let's check this project. And let's go ahead and check this particular piece, Firestore. So Firestore, in this case, we've got our collection. And let's see if I can get a little bit more information about this. Just going to bring it over a bit. So do that. Let's take a look and see if we can pull. Okay, so we have this particular project. We've got this piece of information here as well. Let's go back to home. All right, let's see. So let's go back to this project. And I'd like to go back to just the project overview. And let's take a look at what we've got further down here. Again, it kind of, the options change a bit when we have like a different screen size. So I'm just going to widen it out a bit here. We don't have any extensions in place here, but we do have, let's see, this individual application. Let's see this. So we have our project ID as well. Let's get a closer look. Initialize app we have here. We have all these pieces of information over here. Okay, so we've got our project ID. So it should be for us, this particular endpoint, if we're looking back here, let's go back to the Firebase component here. Again, what we're targeting, we have that listed over here in one of our routes. I think in the post itself, we have it actually targeting at Firestore Google APIs right here.
Okay.
But let's go ahead and drop in this case, let me go back up here, database URL. Let me just check where to get that. So we're in our Firebase console over here. We've got our project selected. Under the Firestore section, we have this, let's see, usage. Let's see some of our rules here. Sometimes takes a little bit of time to pull that up. Also see query builder. Okay. So we've got our project ID. We should be able to actually draw it up ourselves. Let me just double check here. We've got our project ID. So let's grab this. Let's build it off of this. So let's grab this. And let's drop over here. Database URL. That's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be our project ID. And then we're going to have .firebase.io. Excuse me, firebase.com in this case. Let's keep that as is. Let's go back over to here. Let's see here. Let's just value undefined constructor or null. So let's double check here that we have Firebase admin installed. I'm going to check package.json. I see Firebase admin. Okay, so let's check here. And this is an HTTPS URL that we're using over here. Let me go back to server. And let's specify here then that we want this to be HTTPS // There's our project. Let's go ahead and give this a refresh. Now this individual component, let's see. Import all as admin from Firebase admin. Let's see here. Import all as. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and double check here. Let's do a control C, shut down our server. Let's do npm install Firebase. Nope. Stop that. Okay, let's go ahead and double check here that this is all installed. Just a bit of time here.
Okay.
And also, I want to see if we have an individual file here. We have our tsconfig.json. Let's make sure that this is verified here. Okay, just a moment here. Compiler options. And let's see if we don't have module specified here. Let's see. Module. Okay, module is specified right there. I see ES next. Let's see. we're going to go ahead and see here. I can see that this was installed now. Let's go ahead and get this up and running one more time. Okay, so if we're still seeing this issue here, let me change the module to JS. Okay. And target. It's next. So again, this is just something we're dealing with Vite. Maybe a few limitations in terms of like importing and exporting files here, but let's see. We've got our import set up here. We've also got our database URL set up here. Let me try one more time just for good measure. Terminating this. Let's restart. Let's go here. So let's see here. And we can also check a few other things inside of that config file to see what the issue might be. Let's go to tsconfig here. And let's take a look at these ones here. We have target. We have lib in this case, module, skip lib check. We have resolve JSON module. Let's see, strict true. So in this case, include src references path, tsconfig node.json. Okay, so if we've restarted this configuration file, and if it's still not letting us go ahead and import, let me go back to server.ts and import all as admin. Let's see. So in our TypeScript, this is a TypeScript file again that we're utilizing. So let's see, Firebase admin I have in single quotes as well. Let me see if I can double check here one more time for documentation. I believe it was actually just back here, what we were seeing before. We already have all of that code for initializing the app over here in app.tsx. This is where we have config app, initialize app, Firebase config, db get firestore. And from that, we're able to pull our collection, which we did already with just retrieving information. But now what I'd like to do is let's move over some of this code here. So what I'm going to state is, we want all this information, but let's actually move this like into a configuration file here. So what I'm going to do then in that case, this is all going to be our code inside of here. Let's go ahead and create a new file here. I'm going to call this one firestore config dot tsx. We'll make it all tsx. And firestore config, I want to keep it a higher level here. Now firestore config, I'm going to put some information in here. Let's update the imports here. Now app.tsx, let's go ahead and move over a few different pieces to this configuration file. So let's go ahead and grab pretty much everything here. Everything right here. So I'm going to cut this out and we're going to end up importing this. Let's go over into Firestore config. I'm going to paste this one in and we're going to need a few different things imported here. We've already actually set up a few different imports, but we've got all of our different pieces here. Now let's go back over to here and let's import. We got to also set up our exports from here. So let's do export const app, export const db. So these two things we can access here. And now we're going to do import app and db from. And again, we're inside of our src directory here. So I've got to specify a relative path here. I've got to say ... one level higher. And then we've got firestore config right there. So I can target that. And it looks like collection as well, we're going to need. So I'm going to go over to firestore config. All these different pieces we are utilizing at a different level. So let's copy this, bring it over to app.tsx. And let's state here, import collection query, all these different pieces from Firestore config. Doesn't look like we need app in this case, but DB we can bring in. So now we've got all these different pieces here. Let's go back to our application. And let's refresh over here. And we're still seeing this error because of our server file, this import that's taking place here at the top. I'm going to get rid of this for now. Let's save this out. And let's go ahead. Maybe take all this really. I'm going to move this over as well to our config. So let's take everything here and move it over to our configuration file. All right. Now over here in server.ts, let's get rid of this code here that was creating some problems. Go back over here and refresh. And in this case, let's just double check the import we have going on over here. So this is in Firestore config on line 13. So to trace a path to that file, looks like since we're at this level currently, I'll just access service account key.json. And we got to put quotes here. So we've got service account key.json, just making sure that we've got closing quotes there as well. Now, again, if these two files are still presenting issues for us, then I'm going to go ahead and really just comment all of this. Let's go ahead and do a multi-line comment here.
Okay.
All right, perfect there. So let's go ahead here and let's refresh. There we go. There's our application back. So all that really was creating some issues for us here. But
Okay.
we're able to get all this information pulled through. Let's take a look here. Again, it's celestial objects, all that information. If I go over to data table or to dashboard, really, we should still see those, right? We're still able to pull up this information. I've just moved over some of our logic to a configuration file just to keep things a little more organized.
All right.
And so the server here as well, now we can start to import these pieces that we need for this post down here that we're getting. Actually, I mean, if we try to incorporate the GET request into here, it should be fairly easy for me to go ahead and do that. Although in this case, we're going ahead and pulling up all of our current celestial objects. But in this case, we're saying get docs, all documents, query. Let's see, that could also be passed into here. So I'll keep this code as is. I was just thinking about how we can migrate it over to server because we have an existing get method up here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. Let's keep working with the post here. Again, this is the endpoint that we're pointing to. We're pointing to /celestial objects. So when we go ahead and submit that form, again, what we want to do is package up all that information, the data, and send it in the body of our request. So when we send off this request, though, as we have in our code here, let's just do again here. X. And let's submit this one. Let's do Control-Shift-I. Okay. So as we saw last time, there are some console logs that go off for us. And I believe those console logs, let's take a look back over here at app.tsx. Those console logs are happening when we pull up this information. So again, we've got celestial object collection, which is being passed to all of these now. But let's get back to the contact form. So right, again, in this case, this is where we console log all that information. And the issue here was that the data, right, the props.id in this case is undefined. The data that's coming through, we did manage to collect it. Right now, it's all being packaged up.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go ahead and do .create should be caching that information. So let's go to server.ts. And again, over here with this post, we want to just do a console log of this data. I'm going to say here, form. Data from form. Let's go ahead and do a data here. Let's see if this console log gets hit. Let's go ahead.
And while you're doing this, I assume also it's going to be set to where once you submit the information, it goes back to the cataloged information, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. Yeah. Like once we submit this form, it'll be stored up here inside Cloud Firestore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when we see panel view, we'll be able to like see each new record being added here.
Okay.
So it's all basically going to be stored up there. But here's the data that we're trying to send now, right? And in this case, if we send this, the data itself is being packaged up and sent in the form, right? But again, in this case, the authorization that we're using, right? Clearly here, this is not gonna work for us. There's got to be a specifically generated token. So if I go to, let's go to Firebase config one more time. This is where we're creating the app and also the DB over here. So I want to double check the SDK again. They had app is equal to initialize app over here. But they're also talking about, we have initialize app at this point imported from Firebase app. They have initialize app imported from Firebase admin app. So let's see here. If I do Firebase admin app, see how that changes our view over here, if at all. Okay, so in this case, right, it's not allowing us to go ahead and import from Firebase admin app. So I'm going to keep it as Firebase app in this case. Let's go back over here and refresh. And let's get our form back in this case. So again, when we submit this, we send up the information, but let me just verify here how we can pass that token.
Okay.
Okay, so we've already gone ahead here and created that JSON key file. Now, let's see here. We have DB as admin Firestore. In this case, db.collection. Okay. Okay. So in this case, when we send it, let's go back over to server.ts. We are sending up this information, but the database itself, we should be able to go ahead and set up add as well. So let me see if we can utilize, let me go back to app.tsx. And let's take a look again at this route. When we submit this form, we have all this different code here and server calls create happening. But what I can also do is import DB. Let's go ahead and import here. Let's take a different approach here. I'm going to import DB from, in this case, it's going to be, we are in contact form. So let's go one level higher. And let's go to Firestore config. I'm going to bring this one in. And I'd like for us to go ahead and add some information. So let's state here. Let's go ahead here and actually, I'm going to, can we comment this out actually, all of this here? All right, thanks. So let's take this data. Let's target here, first of all, db.collection. And let's target our collection here, which is again, celestial objects. And let's add the data from this form. Then, in this case, we're going to go ahead and set up an ID for this object. Doc ref in this case. Let's see here. And we're going to say and let's go ahead and put in here. And then if there's an error, we can put in a catch statement here. And for that particular error, we get console.error is console.error. And we'll go ahead and say error at a document. And I'll put here the error. All right, so let's go back over to here now. Let's refresh. All right, so let's double check here. db.collection, we're trying to access that collection right up here that has been imported. We did comment out a bit of code here, so it could be creating some issues in terms of our syntax. But let's see. Yep, probably in this case because we have, oh, we should be fine with that const actually. Let's see here. So again, return outside of function, we can see over here on line 53. Let's double check here. And no submit. db collection. Let me verify here. We got all of our code in place. Let's go return here for us. Refresh once more here. So our return is outside of the function here. Let's just double check our syntax for on submit. And in this case, I just want to pass data. Okay, so const of on submit over here. Let's see, we've got add of data. We've got .then .ref, console log. We've got .catch error. We have that final statement there included as well. So let's go ahead and just comment this out for now. Okay, so it looks like the syntax issue isn't right there. Let me verify how we can go ahead and create a different structure here. Let's see. Okay. And in terms of the on submit, there is no return that we've got going on here. Looks like there's potentially just an extra curly brace right there. There we go. All right, so put this back. Now let's go ahead here and do a test submit. Let's do X here. Submit. Let's see over here. db.collection is not a function in this case, although let's double check over here in app.tsx because we do have db.collection included here. Oh, okay, different syntax, right? In this case, we have collection imported here. So let's bring in all these over to, again, in this case, we're working with all this information. But if we're looking at the form itself when we submit it, let's hop over here. Right, okay, so we want to bring over a few different pieces. We want to bring over, I'll just bring all these over for us. Let's go back over to contact form. Let's bring these imports over here. Actually at the top of the file itself. So let's move these right up here. And we've got a few different pieces that we need here now. And so collection itself, the syntax that we used was slightly different over in app.tsx. The syntax was like this. So let's go back over to contact form. And let's take a look at how we're trying to access that collection right over here. So let me drop this in here. And let's actually go ahead and grab this. We're going to replace db.collection here, celestial objects, with what we have here. Okay, and so there's also, let's see, over in app.tsx. Okay, so we've got query in this case, and I can see query is dropped into here. But the particular syntax that we have in here is .add. I believe .add is going to error out for us, but let's just give it one more shot here. Let's do x. Let's try here, see our console. Okay, .add is not a function in this case. So I'm going to need to see the syntax for add. One moment here.
Okay.
Okay, so we have db.collection as well utilized in our syntax, but now we're using collection, dv celestial objects. Over here. Collection. db. Objects. Okay, so we have collection as well. Let's do, okay. So we have one other import up here, which is add doc. Let's see if that's, we have get docs. Let's go ahead here and say add doc. So in this case, instead of utilizing this syntax, let's go ahead and state here that const celestial objects collection is equal to this collection that's returned from this line of code. And then we go ahead and say add doc, that import we set up just above. Let's say add doc. And let's go ahead and take maybe some of this code out here. I'm actually just going to move this over because we're still going to use this, just slightly different syntax. Let's say add doc. And we're going to say to the celestial objects collection, we're going to be adding just our data. And we've got all of our error catching here in place. There's our information here. Let's go ahead and refresh. Now let's go back here and let's try to submit these values again. Let's submit. Okay, and there's document written with an ID. So we should see in this case that it has been written to our database up here. Yep, there's our third object right down here. So we've now successfully, what's that?
So it's taking in information and stuff like that now.
Yep, it's going ahead and just adding it to the collection remotely now.
Okay. So is it now also showing in the database I have?
Yep, it should be showing over there. Let's go over to here and let's do refresh. And let's see if we can pull our dashboard just a moment here. Let's do more tools, developer tools, check our console. So in this case, maybe it's missing a property that we can set up on the fly here. It looks like it's missing an ID. So let's add an ID here with a number value of 3. Let's add that. And I'll go back here and it should clear up this error over here for us. So there we go. There's our third one here. But just have to see the way in which because it's we can see it listed down here, all this information, but the way in which we're accessing it now from the database, it's accessing it like with different keys.
Okay.
So in this case, I mean, we'll probably have to, when we pull the document itself over here, let's go back to app.tsx.
Yeah,
And
because it's not showing. It's just
Mhm.
so it's but
Yeah, because it's a different, because the object has like different keys
hmm
that are being set when we actually like submit the form. So
hmm
what I can do is I can change this up a little bit. We can manually change this one record, but what I can do is when we look at the form, this is how we're packaging everything up and sending it. But let's see over here, when we actually read it, the information that's being packaged up, let's see the inputs themselves. Right, so it's building a register that's really building the data object for us. So what I can do is I can change the register names. Let's change the register name here to what it should really just be, which is name. Or let's expand one of these objects so we can see everything that is required here. So we're going to need, in this case, it's name. We're also going to need, in the register here, it's going to need to be type. And over here, this is going to need to be constellation. And this is going to need to be, looks like time underscore of underscore year. And then we want to go ahead and say here, spotting location. So when it actually writes the object and sends it, we want these keys to be used instead of what we see down here for that third object, which makes it inaccessible. So
hmm
let's say here then, again, this would be just discover. So all these have been updated now. And when we submit this information, again, it's the particular way in which this is being set up is all the information is being passed into, let's see, register. We're using use form up here. And it's basically just packaging up an object with all these key values here. We'll actually see this in the next time, like the next time that I create it. Let's do X for each one of these.
Okay.
And let's submit. And now over here, we can see another document has been written. Let's go over to here and see the newest one. Looks like this one is perhaps the newest one, ID of 3. Let's see, ID of 1. ID, there's no ID for this one. Okay. So this is actually the newest one.
Okay.
Oh, the thing is though that we're not getting any of those values through because when we try to submit this, again, the register itself, let's see. Let's see a console.log of data here. Well, the data that we're really ending up with again is through the onSubmit form, we get the data itself, which is all packaged up over here with register. But register is a state that we've set up here. We're no longer using dispatch. Store is also no longer being used here. But let's see our console log here of the object that was submitted. So we should see when we go ahead and submit this. Well, the thing is, we're no longer using that method inside of service.tsx to do it. Let me update this one with an ID integer of, let's say, 4 here. That'll clear up our error. So we'll see everything loading up, but the information for those two records is not appearing again because the way that we're packaging up those objects, let's see. Name, ID of 4. Okay, none of those values are going through here. So HTML4, though, has to match up with what we see down here with a register.
hmm
So let's go ahead and change this one to say name. Let's change this one to say type. Say this one to say constellation. Let's try time of year. Let's try spotting location. Let's try discover here. Okay. Now let's go back to this form here. Let's remove that for now. Okay, let's submit here. So the record was written. Let's go over here and see. Looks like this is, let's see, the newest one, the one that doesn't have an ID. Okay, so this is the newest one that's coming through here. It doesn't have an ID. I'm going to give it the here. We could actually maybe delete these records for now. Let's delete this document. And let's also delete, let's see here, this document. And let's delete basically all the documents that are creating some issues here for us in terms of rendering.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all good now. We should see all this information come through. But again, of course, except the last one. Now, the last one, I can go ahead and change up each one of these values myself. But again, the way in which we submit this information, let's make sure that these are also the same. Let's change this to name. But let's make sure it matches exactly with HTML4. Let's change this to type. Let's change this to time of year. Let's change this to specification. Let's change this to discover. Let's try to submit this one more time here. Let's, in this case, I'm going to delete this record because it doesn't match up. Let's delete this document. And the thing is, we also want an ID to be included with this data itself that's being added to objects. So what I could do is I could say something like const data with ID. I should be able to go ahead and unpack data and add an ID column, which is something like celestial objects collection +1. Because we can always get the I'm sorry.
What are those three dots before data do?
So those three dots should be expanding,
Okay.
our objects. So in other words, if I
Okay.
yeah, like if I go here and let's clear this out real quick. If I say something like const object is equal to, and let's say first Lewis, last, let's say Medina. So what I should be able to do then here is say, you know, const new object is equal to that object unpacked. And if I just do like that, then it should be pretty much the exact same object. Right? New object is pretty much the same as over there. So I made like a copy of it, but I should also be able to go ahead and do something like, you know, ID is equal to 1. So now when I look at new object, it's the same thing as the contents of that first object, but with an ID merged in.
All right.
So just basically adding another key value pair to this. But let's see. So again, celestial object collection in this case, right, is a particular type here. So what I'm going to say is something like celestial object collection dot length. Let's see if we can pull that length. So data with ID is ultimately what we're going to add here, and it'll always have an ID added to it. So there will be no rendering issues like what we saw before with the page breaking.
Okay.
So we've got all these matching up now. Let's make sure that the name does indeed match for constellation, spotting location, discover of that. Let's go ahead and refresh here. Now let's create a new object. And I'm going to state here x, 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 x. Submit, confirm that the document was written. Let's go over here and see the third object that we just created here. So we're getting the values now, which is great from the form. The ID is not a number, which is still going to cause problems for us. So what I'll say then is when we add the ID, let's delete this record here because it's going to break things here for us. But we should see, I mean, if I change this ID value to like 3, then we should be seeing it loading up here now for us. So if I exit out and then we go back and we refresh, then we'll see X coming through there, the newest one I just created.
Okay. Nice.
Mm-hmm. But the only thing left here is again ID celestial objects dot length plus one. I'm trying to store it as a number here. When we go ahead and actually send it up with this data, but it looks like looks like it needs to actually be a string. But let's see. Let me do a console log of data with ID just to see that object that comes through. So again, here, let's put X, 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 submit. Let's take a look. All right. So now in this case, again, let's see the console log of the object itself right here. So the ID is not a number in this case, but celestial objects.collection.length, then that must not be giving us a full-on length here. So celestial objects collection, I want to see that console logged here for us. So let's do one more time here. Celestial objects collection. Let's refresh this. Let's do one more. It looks like they are working for us here now. Each new one. I'm going to say we've got these two in place now, but the IDs are not a number for that one. Let's go ahead and refresh and see. So we've got 4 in here now, but the fourth record, let's give it a refresh. The fourth record should have an ID of not a number. Yeah, we see ID of not a number there. So it's okay. It's still rendering that information, but we do want those IDs to be as we would expect here. So let's submit this one more time here. And let's go back into console and see, okay, so we have a collection reference here, but the actual contents of this, let's see. Again, in this case, we get the collection, which is returned to us, and then we pass add doc in this case. Just a moment here. Well, also the thing is that we should have passed to this contact form along with like all of our other components. We should have our state passed to us. So over here, we've got props contact form props, but I'm going to get rid of this right now. I'd like for us to actually go ahead and state here celestial objects collection, which is being passed here. So this is our state that's being passed down from app.tsx. So again, that state that we're passing down here, when we render each one of the components, right down here, we're passing that celestial object collection to each one of our components. So we should have access to it over here in contact form as well. And so celestial object collection, that's our state. I'm going to state here celestial object collection.length plus 1, because we want to send up the data, but we also want to add it to state. So let's go over to app.tsx and let's pass down to our components here as well, the setter function, which is going to be set celestial object collection. Let's pass that here. Let's say here, set celestial object collection. Let's set that equal to set celestial object collection. And so now over here in the form, I can go ahead and say, not only do we want to send that data, but we want to update our state, right? We want to update our state with this new data with ID. So let's go ahead here and let's state that set celestial objects collection. First of all, let's go ahead and destructure it up here. We've got the state being passed, but let's get the setter function. Set celestial object collection. We know that we want this function to fire off set celestial object collection, but we want to take a duplicate of celestial object collection and add in that data with ID. And so what this is going to enable us to do is when we add something from a form, once we go back here, we're going to see it without having to refresh the page. So let's go ahead here and remove the ones that are breaking. Let's delete this one, or let's remove like the faulty kind of data that we have from before here. Let's get rid of this one as well. And let's go ahead and put some information in here. If we refresh, we'll see those original two. Let's do select catalog new object. Let's make this test 3. Oops. Let's do test 3. And we're going to paste this through. Go ahead and submit this. Once we exit out, we should see, let's go ahead and refresh here. Okay, so let's see if there was an error with submitting this information here. Let's see. And we are updating our state here. I know that we're updating our collection with that data with ID. Let's go over here to refresh. Okay, so let's try one more time here. We'll do test 3. Paste throughout. Okay, so I'm going to submit this. Go back over to here. So not seeing the confirmation document written with ID. Let's see here. Data with ID, we're going ahead and creating a new object. We're generating a new length here. We're console logging the celestial objects collection here. We're going ahead and updating the state as reflected here. But if this individual line of code right here is giving us an issue, let's go ahead and say, okay, just a moment here. Let's try again. Test 3. Submit this. Okay, so again, no confirmation here. Let me go back to this piece. We can see that there's nothing appearing here, but let's see if we're trying to submit this one contact form. It's probably an issue with the way that I broke up the props here with that form. I think that's the issue for us. So let's see if I can bring back the props that were set here from before. I think it was, but again, in this case, I do want to have that state passed down here. Let's say here, handle submit as well. We have here. All right, so let's see here. So again, we're not utilizing the same syntax as before. We're trying to use these different states here, but but I believe the issue now is that with this form, we had an import in place that was working for us. So let me get it back to what it was before. Let's say props. Let's see if we can get rid of, in this case, we're stating an ID. Let's get it back to what it was really quickly here, because it was a strange, kind of a strange syntax that we had in place there before. Right, this props of contact form props here. So let's bring this up. Now the contact form props are defined up here, I see, as our interface. But let's see. Let's see if I can find contact form props elsewhere. And let's try this flow one more time. I'm going to do test 3, but with the props of contact forms in there. Let's go ahead and submit this. Let's take a look down at our, okay, there we go. The document was written. So the issue then was that one line of code with the props of contact forms not going ahead and allowing us to submit this form here. So we don't necessarily have to take this approach that's been set out here.
Okay.
I can see that again, in this case, the ID of string is set for contact forms here, but yeah, so we don't necessarily need to take this approach. I mean, the alternative is to go ahead and package it up in our own way here. In fact, I would like to do things that way, just because we're going to be able to pass down the state and work with it that way. So let's get rid of this line of code here. Let's bring back in the props that I've been meaning to add here. Again, it's celestial objects collection and also set celestial object collection. So now in this case, instead of register being our state to handle all those values, what I would like to do is create a number of states for each one of those inputs. So I'm going to state over here, let's get rid of these lines of code as well. I'm going to get rid of this. And let's say here again, for each one of our imports, or excuse me, each one of our inputs here, we're going to have, let's say name, set name, and I'm going to do use state and do empty quotes here. Now I want to do this across the board for each one of our imports, or excuse me, inputs that we have. I believe there's 6 inputs. So in this case, again, we've got name, we've got type.
Excuse me.
That's okay. We've got, I believe we've also got constellation. We've also got time. We'll just call it time of year. And we could say here as well, set time of year. We're also going to have location and discoverer. So we had spotting, location, set spotting, location, finally discoverer. And then we have set discoverer. All right, so we've got all these different pieces in here now with use state set up as well. Looks like there's just that curly brace, excuse me, square bracket right there. So now what we got to do is when we go ahead and create this data with ID, we've got to now set each one of those values individually. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to say we've got ID, which is going to be drawn from the length here. We're going to have name, which is going to be our name state. We're going to have constellation, which is our constellation state. We're going to have time of year, which is going to be time of year. We're also going to have spotting location, which is spotting location, our state. Then we're going to have discoverer, which is going to be our discoverer state. And so down here again, when we create this new document, we want to go ahead and take set celestial object collection, our setter function for our state. We're going to expand our current collection of celestial objects, and we're going to add in the data with ID into that state. So the idea here is that when we send this information, again, we should see it appear pretty much instantaneously over here. But the ID still remains a problem, I think, for the third object, with it being not a number. Let's see yeah, ID is still not a number for that one. So let's delete this document and let's go back over to here. Let's refresh. Let's get the latest data pulled up there. And Celestial objects collection dot length, we verified there that that's not going to give us a real number. So we're going to draw this from state. Instead, I'm going to say celestial object collection, which is the state we're passing in up here. So let's go ahead and refresh here. And let's go ahead and say here, let's see if there's an error with our form here. Use state is not defined. So what I'll have to do here is set up an import for use state. And I ideally can do that just right at the top here. So I can say import use state from React. So now use state is defined here. But the problem is that when I type into these inputs, we want to now basically say that on change, we want the particular setter function. In this case, it's going to be set name. We want that to fire off. Set name in this case, it's really going to take just the target of the event. So what I can say here is something like this. We could say e set name, and I could set the value for that to e.target.value. And this is going to be pretty much across the board for each one of our inputs here. So we're going to say on change here, this is going to be set type. And our other one over here, we're going to say set constellation. Let's move this right here. This is going to be set constellation. Then we're going to replace this one here as well. This is going to be set time of year. Then over here, we've got spotting location. So let's go ahead, paste this in, set spotting location. Then finally, our last input here. Let's go ahead and paste in here, set discover. Save that out. And so now what I should see, if I go over here to components and we take a look at our form, let's click on this and bring it up. So there's our contact form. Our contact form is going to have a number of states now tied to it. Where's our contact form? There it is. So our contact form is going to have a number of different states over here. And as I type in to each one of these, we'll see those states update. So we got that X updating there first. And let's go ahead and do this one as well. X, that one updates. X, that one updates. X, that one updates. X, that one updates. And X. Let's see if this one updates finally here. If the last one doesn't update, then the setter function is probably set improperly here, or there could be an issue with the naming of the attribute in the final input. So let's see, on change, I see a slight little, it looks like perhaps a slight little syntax issue here. Let's see. Discover, set discover. We set the discover to a different value according to the setter function that I've set up here of set discover. And so if it's not selecting that final one, it looks like now it's updating. So there's the final one now. And so when we go ahead and submit this form now, it should package up a different object. Let's do test 3. Let's copy this. Let's paste this in. Now, when I go ahead and submit here, let's verify that the record was written. Doesn't look like the record was written here. We're having an issue with .length. Celestial object collection .length +1. It says cannot read properties of undefined here. So if celestial object collection is the state that we're passing into this component, that we're basically going ahead and destructuring up here. This data I don't actually need anymore. Let's remove this data. But again, what happens with, in this case, celestial object collection being passed down it should be accessible to us through this form here, but let's see. Type we have set as well. And let's see. So again, the dot length down here is presenting some issues for us. If it's firing off when we submit the form, then the state should still be available to this component. Let's take a look and see. Let's refresh here. Let's take a look here at the form itself. So what's being passed here, if we see props, it should be available to us for contact form. But if contact form is firing off when we go ahead and click on catalog new celestial object, then it probably has to do with our location here. Let's see if data table, this is the point at which we actually click on that button of catalog new celestial object. When we click on that, handle open fires off. Handle open sets our state of open to true. And based upon whether or not open is true, we can see that the modal here is where that information is being passed to the modal. If the modal is open, then I can see we must have some conditional rendering down here for the form. So let's see. So when we click on again, catalog new celestial object, handle open fires off, open determines our rendering for what is actually displayed here. But I want to see if the form itself is imported here. Okay, so I don't see the form itself imported here. So again, if we set open to true, then modal selection model is the ID here. Let's see if I can state here on close, handle close. Then we go ahead and set open to false. So again, if we click on that button, on click fires off, handle open fires off, changes our state of open, which is what determines the rendering for the modal appearing for us there. And so the modal in this case, I want to see if I can find form, any kind of reference here to contact or to form. So again, in this case, if I click outside the modal, it goes back, but catalog new celestial object, I click. That state of open changes from false to true. In this case, our modal fires off here, but the thing is we've just got to make that state available to that modal itself. So let's see here, I see div. If open is true, then we want it to be hidden. Open is what's determining our modal appearing here. So our modal though, let's see, on selection model change, set selection model to the item. So selection model over here, let's see where selection model is being imported, if it's being imported at all here. Server calls, use get data. Let's see. So we go ahead and selection model, set selection model, use state. Okay, when we go ahead and do delete, we'll customize that behavior as well. But let's see here, just a moment. On close, handle close. When we change open, when we click that, changes it to open, so our modal appears here. Now let's go back over to app.tsx. Let's see our routing logic over here. I can see that celestial object collection and set celestial object collection are being passed. So if we're passing them to each one of our components, when I go to data table, I should be able to go ahead and destructure those components over here. We have the celestial object collection, which we're, in this case, let's see where we're utilizing celestial object collection. We're passing it down. Selection mode change item, any set selection model item. Okay. So on selection model change, we're passing the collection itself to the data table, which is displaying all the information. But set selection model, let's see, set selection model is right here. We're going ahead and updating that. So set selection model, I can see is not open, not on close. See if I can see set selection model. That must be in this case, the ID being just this initial value here of string. But if let's look at contact form actually, I want to see that state. Again, contact data. We have all of these different states here that are marked. But data table, let's see if I can look at data table for a moment here. Okay, so celestial object collection, in this case, there's two that are appearing. So I can see data table, well, we're catching it at the level of data table. But in order for it to be passed on to the form itself, let's go ahead and see here. If I click X here, and then if I click on this one again, let's get rid of this and see the state. Let's go ahead and change this now. Okay, so that hook changes to a state of true. And contact data itself, we can see get data. Let me take a look at that. Let's see, we have get data as well being pulled in. But again, if that appears, I want to see where our form is being imported. Let's see. So if I do, I should be able to do a search here to see where contact form is being imported. Ah. Okay, so modal in this case, I believe, is going to be what's responsible for setting up import contact form here. And that's where we render contact form. Okay. So in this case, let's import the state, right? But the state itself is being passed here, not to, in this case, not to data table. We have it being passed to data table, but it would be passed from data table to the modal to the contact form. So let me go over here then. Let's minimize this. So again, it would be passed from our data table to our modal to our contact form. So let's go to modal here. Let's pass these two, celestial object collection. And let's pass this. Let's also access here, set celestial object collection. There we go. Now let's pass this down. Let's set that equal to set celestial object collection. So that's being passed down to our modal, and our modal is the connecting point for our contact form. I can see if no props dot open. Okay, so props in this case is defined as props. We've got some different data types here. Let's see if I can access these in a different way. So I'm going to state here, instead of on close being passed here, let me see the modal one more time. Not sure where auth checker came from. Let me see here. Right, so this is how we're accessing those props then. So let's go ahead here and say celestial object collection. And this is going to be an array. Looks like we've got to state that data type there. And then we're going to have on, set celestial object collection. And this is going to be a function that's going to be passed through. So we're going to use the same sort of syntax here. Now to contact form, I'm going to go ahead and pass celestial object collection. We're going to pass here celestial object collection. And we're also going to say set celestial object collection. We're going to put it here, set celestial object collection. We're going to change this to set celestial object collection over here. Let's go ahead and refresh. Let's check over here inside of console. Celestial object collection is not defined here, and that looks like it's at the level of modal. So let's just double check over here. Celestial object collection, we have our props, but we've got to access them via the props object, it looks like. So I'm going to say props here, celestial object collection, and I'm going to say here, props, set celestial object collection. So it's going to be accessing it from here. Let's see, set celestial object collection, set celestial object collection. There we go. Okay. So these are set now. Let's go back over to here. Let's refresh. Let's click on our form. And so again, over here, I want to see whether or not we've successfully passed down this state to this component, which is contact form. We can see the props. Great. We've got the list being passed here. And then set celestial object collection. Looks like it's undefined in this case, but let's see. It's probably the way that I'm defining it. So we're not going to say void here. OnClose itself is a function. But let's see. I can see that we've got props.onClose, props.set celestial object collection. Here we've got it as void, which is the same thing as what we've got for onClose. So let's go ahead and test this one out, actually. I'm just going to do test 3. Let's go ahead and grab this. Let's drop it all the way through. Let's take a look over here. Okay, so collection reference, it looks like is what is given back to us over here. But let's get rid of this. First of all, let's check to see if this persisted to our database. It looks like it did. There's our test of 3 right here at the bottom with an ID of 3, which is good. So that should be displaying for us pretty much right off the bat over here. Although set celestial object collection is not a function is a bit of an issue over here for us, because that is what should be updating everything over here. We shouldn't have to refresh the page in order to see it. Let's see if there's an issue with the value here. Planet, star, or nebula. Let's see, spotting location, time of year. Let's see, constellation. I can see that this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It should be having 7 coming through. So let's double check the form itself just to verify that each one of these values is coming through. We've got type, which does not appear to be used here. So let's go ahead and add this one as well. Type is going to be type. I'm going to get rid of that faulty record here that came through. So we can just start again with fresh new record here. Let's go ahead and delete this one. Let's go back over. Now, again, over here, let's say test 3. Let's go ahead and copy this and paste it throughout. Go ahead and submit. We see in this case a collection reference reported back to us, but set celestial object collection is still, in this case, undefined. It's just a bit of an odd way that they're passing props through components here, but
Okay.
I'm going to try to do my best here to work with the given structure that we have in place. But let's see, set celestial object collection is what's being passed over here to data table as well. If I go over to app.tsx, I think the issue is that, okay, we have route component. We're also passing set celestial object collection as our prop over here to each one of our components. And it's set celestial object collection as our setter function over here. So as long as this component, or excuse me, the setter function, as long as this is passed down properly right down here, and then it's passed down, let's double check our components here again one more time. From app.tsx, it's passed down to data table. So let's go over to data table. In data table, let's make sure that it's being passed down over here. I can see that we have the collection that's being passed here with props, but set celestial object collection doesn't appear to be defined at this point. So if it's being passed to data table, let's see, we've got data table and then routes. So if it's being passed over here in app.tsx, The setter function is right there for us. So if we're passing through set celestial object collection here from, again, app.js down to our route.component, which in this case is going to be data table, we should be receiving that there. But let me see, I'm going to go over to data table. And let's try doing, at this point, just a console log of set celestial object collection. Now, the issue with this as well could be the way in which I'm accessing props here for this component as well. It appears to be a specific way that I've got to use to access those, given this sort of TypeScript format that we have. So I've got to go ahead over here and set up props. We've got our prop set up over here. Over here in the modal, we have props set to props. So let's go over to data table and let's set props equal to props here. And now what we've got to do is we've got to say, props is props here. Let's get rid of our curly braces. So props is props here. Let's refresh over here. And let's see our console real quick here. So celestial object collection is not defined here. So let's go ahead and define these. So this is going to be celestial object collection, and also we're going to have set celestial object collection. So now down here, when we actually reference what we're passing, it's got to be props dot celestial object collection and props dot set celestial object collection. So let's go ahead and refresh here. This error appears to be from the individual data table here. So let's go ahead and take a look at line 71. Right down here, when we pass it, we've got to go ahead and state here props dot celestial object collection. And that's going to load up all of our information here now. So what I'm going to do is take a look inside of our components over here and verify whether or not contact form now has this prop available to it. It does say undefined over here, but let's take a look over at data table now. So data table celestial object collection is what is included over here, but I can see that again in this case, the props that are set here, set celestial object collection is still in this case void. But let's see again, data table is rendered in this case directly through routes, which go all the way back to app. But let's see. Let's go to app.tsx. This is handling all of our render logic down here. So celestial object collection and set celestial object collection are down here. Set celestial object collection is being passed over here. Over at the level of modal, we should have gone ahead here now. Well, let's just start with data table. So data table in this case, we're accepting these props. Let's go to data table and see here. I can see just the celestial object collection. Let's see here. Just one moment here. So again, we've got props as props here. Set celestial object collection is what is being passed in this case to our data table. Let's go ahead and refresh here real quick. Unterminated string constant. Let's go ahead and see data table line 73. Let's go down a little bit, just a little bit more to where we were right here. And let me go ahead and save this one out over here. So props.set celestial object collection, or excuse me, celestial object collection is working for us. I can tell just because it's appearing here in the rows. But again, set celestial object collection doesn't appear to be passed here for us. Let me see if I can do quickly console.log of props.set celestial object collection. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's go back over to console and see undefined in this case. So if props in this case is not containing that collection, even though I'm passing it directly from app, then I'll have to verify again the way in which we're going ahead and accessing props here. So let's see, props is being passed here to data table. We've got set selection, celestial object collection here as void. We are also, let's see, data table itself. I want to go back to app.tsx because app.tsx here contains routes. I can see here hash router. Let's see if we've got any sort of providers here about contact. I can see index.tsx. So I just want to make sure that there's no piece that I'm missing here in terms of where components are being passed down to. So app in this case leads directly to our hash router, and hash router is, it appears to be an import from React Router DOM. But routes, let's go ahead and take a look over at those again. I think that was over here in auth, or maybe it was, need to see where routes was. Individually, I believe it was over, perhaps over here in config. So we've got routes over here just as our exports here for each one of these. We've got our component, and then we've got our contact. We've got our dashboard component, which is loading up here, but there is no dashboard as pages dashboard. So our pages over here, dashboard, it looks like this is the celestial object collection, okay, that we were passing over here. Okay, so let me go ahead here and do set celestial object collection. Now let's do over here, because that might have been our missing link right here.
Yeah, because everything on the right, it's looking like it's clearing up.
Yeah, it's definitely clearing up here, but set celestial object collection. Go ahead and do that. Okay, so there we go. Now we're getting it passed down to the component that it needs to get to. So let's verify here. If I've got app, which passes to data table, we can see now data table has that setter function and the state itself as well. Let's go over to modal. Modal also has the object and also the setter function, and modal is what's going to pass down to the form, which in this case, contact form now has the setter function. Very good. All right. So we've got test 3. Let's go ahead and create here test 4. And I'm going to copy those. Let's do test 4. And let's go ahead and drop all these in. So we submit this. Now we go ahead and exit. And let's go ahead and refresh. So it is loading up for us test 4 there, but I want to see the particular error that's appearing for us when we submit there. It should be updating the state, but let's go test 5. Let's grab this. So again, I'm going to submit this form, but before I hop back out, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at our console just to see what appeared there for us. The document was written here, no errors appearing with setting that state itself. Let's go ahead and exit out here. Now, when I go back, it appears as though, let's take a look at the state itself, because set celestial object collection, when I submit this form, it's going ahead and it's merging in this new data with ID into our existing collection here of items. So right over here, again, we're just merging in that data with ID into our collection from here. Let's go ahead and see one more time. I want to see our collection. Let's click in here and let's see our collection. Now, if I go into components and I take a look at data table, let's see the state. if it may have been modified. I can see a state here of all of the different test listings or contacts that we created here. So if it's having problems displaying them, then it's probably just an issue with the kind of rendering we have in place here. If I take a look at data table, again, open is what determines the logic for whether or not, for what should actually appear here. So when we go ahead and deselect the modal, changes open to false, the modal disappears, and then all these pieces load back up over here. So again, in this case, props.celestial object collection is what we are utilizing to go ahead and update those rows. So if we're updating the state, and the state itself is also to our last kind of structure here, let's go ahead and change. Let's remove this for a moment. We're on the modal, actually, I want to see. On close, we have handle close. Now, what is handle close doing? That could be creating some issues for us. Handle close looks like it's doing, okay, it's just changing our state back to false then in that case. So when we click on handle close, it goes ahead and removes that modal. But the modal itself, we're passing celestial object collection to. And down here, we're passing celestial object collection over here as well. So the thing is, though, I mean, if we're updating the state, then really it should be displaying here as necessary. I'm not sure if there's maybe a formatting issue when we load. Yeah, there we go. Maybe it was just a rendering issue with the page there. But let's go ahead and try that one more time. So again, we've got test 5 appearing here. We've got all the way to test 1. Now let's go ahead here and check out things like delete. In this case, if I select this one, then what happens is I update, I think that's set selection mode model, I mean. So when we select that, let's see if that. Okay, so when I click here, it looks like it's going ahead and taking that item's ID. And if I click on multiple items here, it's grabbing their IDs. Let's just test this flow one more time. I'm going to try new object here. Let's actually remove a few of these records real quick. Perhaps the oldest record to appear here. Let's see if we can find it. Looks like it's our last selection there. Let's do delete document here. And let's get rid of 4 as well, just because I know that it limits the items that are displayed to 5. So I want to see if it when we submit this form here, if it automatically appears in that list. Let's do test of 4. Let's grab this, paste this in, paste this in, paste this in. So again, we go ahead and submit here. Let's hit X. Okay, and let's see here. So in this case, I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's a thing we could go back and fix. But let me just double check here. Okay, it looks like the 4th record that we tried to create there did not go through. Let me go ahead here and repeat the process and verify in the console if there was any sort of issue that popped up for us. The document appears to have been written now. If I go back here, I can see the 4th document has been written. Let's go back over to here and exit out. Let's click on the X. And so again, some re-rendering issues, but again, we can leave that as is, just so we can move into maybe very quickly here deleting this. When we select any items on this page, it adds the ID of the item that we've selected to the
You're good.
all right, to the selection model state that we have stored, I believe here at the level of data table. So data table, as we select these individual items here, it adds their IDs. If we select here, it should actually add all of the IDs for all of the different items. When we go ahead and click on delete, it looks like what it's going to do is take from selection model the first item. It's going to go ahead and get data here, and it's going to indicate here the actual item that was removed. So instead of this being a server call dot delete, what we can do, we can also go ahead and do something like this, get data. So let me do get data and put that on handle close. So get data should refresh the information that appears for us there. So let's go ahead and state, let's do test 5. And if we say test 5 across the board for this, go ahead and submit this one. Let's exit out. Okay, so still some strange rendering issues here, which we can always return to, but test 5 is appearing here for us. When we go ahead and delete this data, we still we don't really want a server call to take place at this point. We want kind of like what we had at the level of the contact form. We're still going to want to import DB over here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and bring in all of these pieces. Pretty much everything right here. So that when we go back over to data table, now if I go ahead and set up these imports at the top, in this case, we're going to be able to state, okay, when we go ahead and delete data here, we want to go ahead and not issue a server call to delete. We want to go ahead and we want to say something like, all right, just like what we did over in contact form, we want to take DB. We want to take this DB. We want to draw the collection from it. And we want to go ahead here, draw up that collection first of all. And then we should be able to go ahead and utilize a similar syntax for going ahead and removing here. This should be remove doc, but let me see here. Okay, so this would be delete doc from Firestore. So this is going to be add doc here. We're going to instead say delete doc. And so delete doc in this case, we're going to go ahead and state. See here, we've got an individual document. But let's see here. Again, we've got delete selection model 0. In that case, they're selecting the very first item from delete data. But let's see. So in the server calls, when we were passing the information, again, we're not doing this. We're working with the DB object now. So we could like replicate this file and make it so that it uses Firebase or Firestore syntax. But we're no longer issuing fetch requests. We're just working directly with that database object. So delete in this case, let's take a look and see what the syntax is here. Looks like they're indicating the ID of what needs to be removed there, which is fine. But if I go to data table, again, in this case, we want to take that collection of selection model, that collection of items that we've identified here. And we want to get a reference to the document we want to delete. So let's see here for just a moment. Okay. All right, so let's see here. So let's also import. Okay, we have doc here already. So we've got the collection itself. let's put a little bit of other code here. I'm going to state wants document ref, or document reference here is going to be, in this case, doc, that import we have up there. DB, which is already imported for us. We have celestial objects. And then as our third argument over here, we're going to have document ID. And document ID is going to be passed in for us over here. But if we want to delete multiple items, then let's see here, just a moment. Okay. So this is going to be for an individual item here. Let's go ahead and state here, again, delete data in this case is going to take in, I'm going to state this as an asynchronous function as well. So I'm going to say async, and I'm going to create this as just a regular function. Okay. So, so in this case, let's go ahead and remove this line of code right here. And we've got our asynchronous function defined over here. Let's go ahead and put inside of asynchronous function, let's give this the actual item in this case, let's say delete document. And so what should fire off though, the individual function when we click on delete is it should actually be, as we can see here, for the button of delete, let's see, delete data. So let me go ahead and state delete data so that that is defined. So we've got delete data now in this case. Delete data in this case is going to take a document ID, which is going to be a string. And it's going to, first of all, here, let's get rid of this line of code. It is, first of all, here, going to identify that document ref. We're going to try here and await. And we're going to state here, delete doc. And delete doc is going to take the document ref passed into it. And then we're going to say here, console.log. And we're going to state in this case, document deleted successfully. And again, we've got our try and our await here. Let me say try here. And let's move this over a little bit. Let's try this to do await. Let's do a console log here. And let's go ahead and move our catch down here. And if there is an individual error, we want to catch that error. And we want to go ahead and put a little bit more information here about that. Console.error, we're going to say error deleting document. And then we're going to go ahead and drop an error in here. And so again, what's going to happen here is when we go ahead and fire off this function, if we've got multiple documents here to delete, right? If we've got a selection here, then really what should be set here, we've got our document ref with the document ID that's going to be passed in here. But let's go ahead and state here, const delete data, and I'm going to set it equal to, I'm going to change this one to handle delete. And handle delete, since I've got it defined here, delete data itself as well is basically going to go ahead and fire off here, handle delete. we're going to pass in the selection model. And the selection model, again, the array is what's going to be passed in here. We've got to go ahead and iterate through each one of those arrays. So let's go ahead and state here async function. This is also going to be an asynchronous function we've got here. So if I go ahead and put in quotes here for delete data, now what's going to happen here, this is delete data, but it's going to take in an array. So we're going to state here, let's say document IDs to delete. Because this is TypeScript, we've got to go ahead here and indicate that this is going to be an array that's passed in here. And document IDs to delete, in this case, again, it's actually not really going to be passed in here. It's just going to be, let's go ahead and take this. Let's bring this back. Just get rid of this parameter that's inside of here. And so when we fire off, again, delete data, what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and fire off handle delete, but for each one of those IDs inside of our state. So handle delete or delete data is our individual function here that's going to fire off. Let's try giving it just that const structure one more time. Const, in this case of delete data, is going to appear here with arrow syntax as such. So again, this function, when we click on the button, it's going to fire off handle delete, but we want it to really happen for each one of the items inside selection model. So let's say for, let's say const document ID in, and I'll say selection model. We know that we then want to go ahead and take each one of those, and I'll say await handle delete, but handle delete is going to take in the document ID, each one of those that we iterate over. So in that case, we're going to go ahead and await here. Let's go ahead and close out this for. Let's save that out. And I've also got to go ahead and close out. Looks like we're good in this case. I'll go ahead and remove this. There we go. That appears to be good for us. Let's see. And let me change this. Let's go ahead and move this over. This is closing out this individual piece right here. And let's go ahead and move this one over. So our delete of data, in this case, we're going ahead and we're doing that for, and then we're going ahead and we're doing, oh, let's go ahead and put our curly braces here. Let's put that for there. And now let's go ahead here and close out this function. So that should be good for us now. So for, and we've got our await, handle delete. Now, in this case, reserved, unexpected reserved word await in this case. Let's see here. Document ID of, oh, let me change this to, yeah, let's see here. Of selection model, we've got asynchronous function handle delete. The await keyword, let's go ahead and just check here. We've got await in this case, but we've also got delete data, which is firing off here for us. So let's go ahead here and let's also make this an asynchronous function. And I'm going to have to use the asynchronous function syntax here. And I'm going to have to use the syntax that we need for our function here. So handle delete. In this case, it's not going to be handle delete. It's going to be delete data. So there we go. All right. Now, again, in this case, it's basically going to go through our entire selection model here and remove the items that we've selected. So let's go over to here. Let's take a look at data table again over here. Let's select a few of these. We select one of these, we can see that that item over there populates as 2. Let's go ahead and click on delete. And so delete, firing that off. Let's see if there's any errors here. And index of is not a function here. So let's see if there's index of in this case. We're going ahead and stating delete data for const document ID of selection model. We await handle delete in this function. So let's go ahead and try one more time here to select delete. I know we're a few minutes over time here. I just wanted to verify one more thing here. So document ID in this case is the string that's being passed through for each one of these. Index of in this case is not a function. So if we're going ahead and we're doing document ID from selection model is an array in this case. So let's see if I need to indicate here that selection model is an array. Let's see here. Let me see here as well. Let's see. Again, in this case, document ref wait. Catch error. Right, so document ID in this case is a string. Let's see if I can go ahead and just do a console log of selection model. Okay, so in this case, we've got 2. There's just one item inside of there. So let's go ahead and state here as well, console log of document ID. So if I delete here, okay, we've got delete doc. Let's see if these are actually being deleted up here. Okay, so those aren't changing. Let's just see one last thing here. I've console logged the document ID. And again, when we go ahead here and click on this button, it's going to fire off delete data, which we've got defined up here. This asynchronous function of delete data. So let's try here just to remove this await keyword. And let's go ahead and just define this as a regular function. Let's click delete here. Okay, so it doesn't change the fact that this is still going ahead and stay here. Right, so it looks like in this case, we've got to take the document ID and pass it through as a string. So one sec here. See? Let's try to select multiple ones here. Okay, so we're trying to pass in that toString. Let's go ahead and pass here. ToString. Let's go ahead and click delete here. There we go. Okay, so it looks like it actually went ahead and deleted just that one right there that I sent.
All right. So delete. So now we just need to work on update.
Yep. Yep. In our next session, we can finish off update. And this should be good. But let's
And just smooth around the edges when it comes to the rendering, right? You said when it comes to, I don't have to hit refresh.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So can we schedule it for tomorrow and if possibly on Friday? It's just on Friday, I have to do it a hour later than normal, if that's okay.
Okay. Okay. So that would be 7 to 9
You know,
my time, you mean?
yeah. So I don't know if we'll need Friday, but just in case we can schedule it, we can, if we need to use it, we can use it. If we need to cancel, we can cancel. So
Yeah. All right. That sounds good. Just wanted to check here one last time. Delete. And let's see. Okay, so it appears as though it's still having some issues with the deletion there.
okay.
Right, but this it is also refreshing the page, so that's something that we can work on. But I think what it's doing is it's reloading the window as well. We can see on line 71. So there's basically
Hmm.
just some existing code here for us that when we go ahead and click on this, click on delete, we can see that that one has been deleted. Let's refresh here. Let's give that a refresh right there. Okay, so it looks like 5 are still appearing here. So we can revisit here why I mean, it's confirming that it was deleted successfully,
Hmm.
but I can see document deleted successfully. But in this case, again, yeah, we'll just have to revisit a little bit to see why it hasn't gone ahead here and actually deleted that record for us. Although I am seeing, well, I'm still seeing 5 records appearing, yeah.
Yeah.
Need to see why, again, we're getting that confirmation, but we're pretty close to the end here with delete. Excuse me, and then update we should be able to finish by the end of our next session together.
All right. Awesome.
Cool. By the way, I just want to be mindful. I have gone a little bit over time. Is it okay if I just continue to book for those hours? I can just do for the extra time that I've done.
The extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, if that's okay for you, but otherwise, yeah.
That's I understand. I understand you're busy. So
All right,
we'll just
cool.
okay. Sounds good. All
Uh,
right. I'll just send me the time for the stuff and we'll
yep.
be all right.
All right.
Sounds
Sounds
good.
all right. So I'll send you a confirmation as soon as I got it, excuse me,
You're good.
for later this week, okay?
Okay. So for tomorrow and Friday.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. All right, Matthew. I'll talk with you tomorrow, okay?
Talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.